family can be complicated, but I never expected my own brother and his wife to try to steal my beach house right from under me. I'm Rachel, and this is the story of how my sister-in-law's greed led to one of the most satisfying moments of justice I've ever experienced. I bought my beach house 5 years ago, long before my brother James married Sarah. It was my dream come true, a beautiful 3-bedroom property right on the coast, with a wraparound porch and floor-to-ceiling windows that let you watch the sunset over the ocean. I'd worked hard for years as a real estate attorney, saving every penny and living modestly while my colleagues splurged on luxury cars and designer clothes. When I finally found the perfect property, I knew all those sacrifices had been worth it. The house needed work when I bought it. The previous owners had let it fall into disrepair, but I saw its potential. I spent weekends painting, fixing, and renovating, turning it into my perfect getaway. Every nail I hammered and every wall I painted made it feel more like mine. I was proud of what I'd accomplished on my own. Then James met Sarah. At first, she seemed nice enough, always complimenting the house whenever they visited, asking about the renovations, and showing what appeared to be genuine interest in my hard work. I was happy that my brother had found someone who seemed to fit so well into our family. "This place is absolutely gorgeous," Sarah would say, running her hand along the newly restored hardwood railings. "You're so lucky to have it." I should have noticed the gleam in her eye when she said lucky, as if my years of hard work and saving had nothing to do with it. The problems started about 6 months after their wedding. Sarah began dropping hints about how nice it would be if they could use the beach house more often. At first, it was just casual mentions during family dinners. "You know, James and I would love to spend more time by the ocean," she'd say, giving me meaningful looks across the table. "It's such a shame this beautiful house sits empty so often." I explained that I used the house regularly for weekend getaways and as a quiet place to work on complicated cases, but Sarah wasn't easily deterred. The hints turned into direct requests, and then demands. She started telling other family members that I was selfish for not sharing my property more freely. My brother, who had always been supportive of my independence, began to echo her sentiments. "Come on, Ratch," he'd say, using my childhood nickname. "Family should share with family. Mom and Dad always taught us that." What they conveniently forgot was that I'd offered to help James save for his own beach house years ago, but he'd always preferred spending his money on expensive cars and luxury vacations. Now, suddenly, my beach house was supposed to be family property? Things came to a head when Sarah lost her job. She and James had been living beyond their means, and their finances took a hit. One evening, they showed up at my downtown apartment unannounced. "We need to talk about the beach house," Sarah declared, settling herself on my couch without waiting for an invitation. I raised an eyebrow, already suspicious of where this was heading. "What about it?" "Well," she began, her voice taking on that fake sweet tone I'd come to dread. "James and I are going through a rough patch financially. As you know, we've been thinking about how to cut back on our expenses, and we had this brilliant idea." James sat quietly beside her, looking uncomfortable but not disagreeing. "We thought we could move into the beach house for a while," Sarah continued. "It would really help us get back on our feet. You hardly use it during the week anyway, and we'd take such good care of it." I stared at them in disbelief. "Move in? To my beach house? The one I bought and renovated myself?" "Don't be so dramatic," Sarah rolled her eyes. "It's not like we're asking you to give it to us. We just need a place to stay while we sort things out. Maybe 6 months or so?" I looked at my brother, hoping to see some sign that he recognized how inappropriate this request was. Instead, he just gave me a pleading look. "Please, Ratch, we're family. We'd do the same for you." That was rich, considering they lived in a 1-bedroom apartment and had never offered to help me with anything. Still, against my better judgment and because I did love my brother, I decided to be generous, with conditions. 1 month, I said firmly. "You can stay for 1 month while you look for a more affordable apartment, but I need you to sign a temporary occupancy agreement." Sarah's face lit up, but I could see a calculating look in her eyes that should have warned me what was coming. "Oh, we don't need anything formal between family," she protested. "Just hand over the keys, and we'll take good care of everything." But I insisted on the agreement. As a real estate attorney, I'd seen too many cases of informal arrangements gone wrong. They reluctantly signed, and I gave them a set of keys, making it clear that this was a temporary arrangement. For the first 2 weeks, everything seemed fine. They sent me photos of beautiful sunsets and told me how much they appreciated my help, but then things started to change. Sarah began talking about redecorating. "This place could use some updating," she'd say during our phone calls. "Those curtains are so dated, and the kitchen really needs a modern touch. I reminded her that this was a temporary arrangement, but she just laughed it off. Then I started noticing small changes whenever I'd stop by to check on things. My carefully chosen decorations were being replaced with Sarah's taste, bold, flashy items that clashed with the beach house's peaceful vibe. When I confronted them about it, Sarah became defensive. "We're living here now. We should be able to make it comfortable for us." "For 1 month," I reminded her. The agreement was for 1 month. That's when she showed her true colors. "Oh, about that, James and I have been talking, and we really think it would be best if we made this arrangement permanent." I felt my blood pressure rising. "Permanent? This is my house, Sarah. The agreement was for 1 month." "Well, that's not very family-oriented of you," she snapped. "Besides, we've already enrolled in the local gym and started looking at schools in the area." "Schools?" I was dumbfounded. "You're not staying long enough to need schools." But they had already made up their minds. The next day, I discovered they'd changed the locks when my key wouldn't work in the door. I stood on my own porch, staring at the new locks in disbelief, when Sarah opened the door with a smug smile. "Oh, did we forget to give you the new keys? So sorry about that. We just felt we needed more security, you understand, don't you?" Behind her, I could see that more of my things had been moved or replaced. My heart sank as I realized how naive I'd been to trust them. "This is illegal," I said calmly, my attorney mind already spinning into action. "You can't change the locks on a property you don't own." Sarah's smile widened. "Actually, possession is 9/10 of the law, isn't it? And since we're family, and you verbally agreed to let us stay here, it's basically adverse possession now." James looked it up. I had to bite back a laugh. My brother, who had barely passed his high school legal studies class, thought he could outmaneuver a real estate attorney on property law? "Is that what you think?" I asked, keeping my voice level. "It is," James said, appearing behind Sarah, "and if you try to kick us out, we'll tell everyone how you went back on your word to help family in need. Mom and Dad would be so disappointed." They were trying to manipulate me with family guilt, but they had no idea what they were up against. I smiled, reached into my bag, and pulled out my phone. "Before we continue this conversation, why don't you check the property records? They're public, you know. Go ahead, look up this address." Sarah's smug smile faltered slightly, but she pulled out her phone and started typing. I waited patiently, knowing exactly what she would find. The color drained from her face as she read the screen. This can't be right." "What is it?" James asked, peering over her shoulder. "The house, it's not in Rachel's name, it's owned by a corporation." My smile widened. "That's right. Ocean View Properties LLC, to be exact. A company I established years ago, long before I bought this house. And do you know what else?" They stared at me, their confidence crumbling. "That occupancy agreement you signed? It wasn't with me personally, it was with the LLC, which means you're not dealing with family anymore, you're dealing with a corporate entity, and you just violated about half a dozen terms of that agreement." But you can't do that," Sarah sputtered. "We're family." "Family doesn't try to steal from family," I replied firmly. "Now, you have two choices. You can leave now, voluntarily, or I can have my corporate attorney begin eviction proceedings. Which would you prefer?" James finally found his voice. "You'd really do that to your own brother?" "You really tried to steal my house," I countered. "So yes, I would. You have until tomorrow morning to get out, and yes, I already have a locksmith on the way to restore my locks." The next few hours were tense as they packed their things, all while Sarah alternated between crying about my cruelty and threatening to tell the whole family how heartless I was. But I stood firm. As they loaded the last of their belongings into their car, Sarah turned to make one final attempt. "You know, Mom and Dad always said you were the selfish one," she spat. "Looks like they were right." I couldn't help but laugh. "Actually, Mom and Dad know all about the LLC. In fact, Dad suggested it when I first started looking at properties. He said it would protect me from exactly this kind of situation." Their jaws dropped at this revelation. All this time, they thought they were playing a clever game, but they had been outmaneuvered before they even started. "But all those family dinners, you never said anything," James protested. "Because it was none of your business how I structured my property ownership," I replied, "just like it's none of your business now. Goodbye, James, goodbye, Sarah. I'll see you at Christmas, at Mom and Dad's house." After they left, I had all the locks changed again and installed a security system. I also had my attorney send them a formal letter warning against any future attempts to access the property. The family fallout was predictable. Sarah tried to paint me as the villain, claiming I had cruelly evicted them when they were in need. But when Mom and Dad revealed that they had not only known about my LLC but had encouraged it, her narrative fell apart. "We raised our children to be independent and responsible," Mom told Sarah at the next family gathering. "Rachel worked hard for what she has. If you and James want a beach house, you'll have to do the same." The experience changed my relationship with my brother and sister-in-law permanently. James eventually apologized, admitting that he had let Sarah's materialism cloud his judgment, but things would never be quite the same between us. Sarah, on the other hand, never forgave me for outsmarting her. She still makes snide comments at family gatherings about people who value property over family. I just smile and remind myself that my beachfront views are worth every bit of her bitterness. The whole incident taught me several valuable lessons. First, trust your instincts. If someone seems too interested in your assets, they probably are. Second, always protect yourself legally, even, or especially, when dealing with family. And third, never underestimate the power of proper planning. My beach house remains my sanctuary, perhaps even more so now that I've had to defend it. Every time I sit on that wraparound porch, watching the sunset over the ocean, I'm reminded that some things are worth protecting, and that sometimes the best defense is careful preparation. The story spread through our extended family and friend circle, becoming a cautionary tale about greed and entitlement. Some cousins who had been considering similar moves on other family members' properties suddenly became much more respectful of boundaries. Sarah and James eventually got back on their feet financially, though it took them longer than it might have if they'd focused on solving their problems instead of trying to take what was mine. They bought a small house inland, no ocean view, but within their means. I still hear through the family grapevine that Sarah complains about how unfair it is that I have such a beautiful beach house all to myself, but now when she does, other family members just remind her of how she tried to steal it and failed. As for me, I've made some changes to how I handle family and property. I still host family gatherings at the beach house occasionally, but now everyone signs a visitor agreement first. Some call it excessive, but I call it prudent. The whole experience also led me to start a small side business advising other women on how to protect their assets, especially when dealing with family pressures. It's amazing how many people face similar situations but don't know how to protect themselves legally. One afternoon, about a year after the incident, I was sitting on my porch when I received an unexpected text from James. "I finally understand why you were so careful with your property," he wrote. "Sarah's been pressuring her parents to sign over their cabin to us. Says it's basically abandoned since they only use it in the summer. Sounds familiar, doesn't it?" I had to laugh at the irony. "Maybe you should suggest they form an LLC, I texted back. His response was quick, "Already did." Sarah wasn't happy about it. It was a small moment of vindication, knowing that my brother had learned something from our experience. Sometimes the hardest lessons are the most valuable. The beach house continues to be my haven, my investment, and now, a symbol of standing up for what's right. Every improvement I make, every moment I spend there, feels even more precious because I fought to keep it. As I write this from my favorite spot on the porch, watching the waves roll in, I can't help but feel grateful, not just for the house itself, but for the wisdom to protect it. The ocean breeze carries away the last traces of bitterness, leaving only peace and the satisfaction of knowing that sometimes, justice comes with a sea view. The aftermath of the beach house incident rippled through our family in unexpected ways. Some relatives, particularly those who had initially sided with Sarah and James, began to reevaluate their own attitudes toward property and entitlement. It sparked important conversations about boundaries, respect, and the true meaning of family support. My parents, who had remained quietly supportive throughout the ordeal, later confessed that they had faced similar pressures from relatives over the years. Their advice about the LLC had come from their own experiences with family members who felt entitled to share in their success. "We knew you'd face this someday," Dad told me during a quiet moment at the beach house. "That's why we always taught you to be independent and protect yourself." Some people confuse family love with family obligation. Those words stuck with me, becoming a guiding principle in how I handled both personal and professional relationships. The beach house incident wasn't just about property, it was about standing up for oneself and maintaining healthy boundaries, even with family. Sarah and James's attempt to take over my beach house failed spectacularly, but the real estate records they discovered that day taught them a valuable lesson about assumptions and entitlement. Sometimes the sweetest victory isn't in winning the battle, but in having prevented it altogether through careful planning and foresight. Now, when I host family gatherings at the beach house, There's a new level of respect for what I built. Even Sarah, though she rarely visits, has stopped making snide comments about my selfishness. Perhaps she finally realized that protecting what you've worked hard for isn't selfish, it's smart. As for me, I've never regretted my decision to stand firm. My beach house remains exactly what I always wanted it to be, my personal sanctuary, earned through hard work and protected by wisdom. And every sunset I watch from my porch reminds me that some views are worth fighting for.